Polite ways to disagree in English. I see your point, but acknowledges the other person's perspective before presenting your own. Example: I see your point, but I think we should prioritize the budget. I respectfully disagree. A straightforward, polite way to express disagreement. Example: I respectfully disagree. The data suggests a different approach. That's an interesting perspective, but shows appreciation for their view while introducing your own. Example: That's an interesting perspective, but I believe we need more evidence. I understand where you're coming from, however. Validates their stance before offering a counterpoint. Example: I understand where you're coming from, however, I think this plan is more practical. I'm not sure I agree with that. A gentle way to express doubt without being confrontational. Example: I'm not sure I agree with that. The timeline seems too tight. I have a different view on this. Politely introduces your perspective without dismissing theirs. Example: I have a different view on this. I think we should prioritize quality. While I appreciate your opinion, I think shows gratitude for their input before sharing your own. Example: While I appreciate your opinion, I think we should explore other options. I hear what you're saying, but acknowledges their statement while gently disagreeing. Example: I hear what you're saying, but I believe we need a different strategy. I take your point, but a concise way to validate their argument before countering. Example: I take your point, but the costs might outweigh the benefits. That's a valid point, but recognizes the strength of their argument before offering a counterpoint. Example: That's a valid point, but I think we should consider the long-term impact. I see things a bit differently. A soft way to introduce your differing opinion. Example: I see things a bit differently. The data supports a different conclusion. I'm not entirely convinced that. Expresses skepticism politely without outright rejection. Example: I'm not entirely convinced that this is the best approach. I can see why you'd say that, but shows empathy for their perspective before disagreeing. Example: I can see why you'd say that, but I think we need more resources. That's one way to look at it, but acknowledges their viewpoint as valid while offering an alternative. Example: That's one way to look at it, but I believe we should focus on efficiency. I understand your reasoning, but validates their logic before presenting your own. Example: I understand your reasoning, but I think we should prioritize safety. I'm afraid I don't quite agree. A polite and slightly formal way to disagree. Example: I'm afraid I don't quite agree. The evidence points elsewhere. I have a slightly different take on this. Suggests a minor difference in opinion, keeping the tone light. Example: I have a slightly different take on this. We should consider user feedback. I appreciate your perspective, however. Shows respect for their view before introducing your own. Example: I appreciate your perspective, however, I think we need a backup plan. I'm not sure that's the case. a gentle way to question their statement. Example: I'm not sure that's the case. The numbers don't add up. I get what you mean, but... A casual way to acknowledge their point before disagreeing. Example: I get what you mean, but I think we should try a different method. That's an interesting idea, but... complements their idea while offering a counterpoint. Example: that's an interesting idea, but it might not work for our audience. I see your logic, but... recognizes their reasoning before presenting an alternative. Example: I see your logic, but I think we should focus on sustainability. I'm not entirely on board with that. A polite way to express hesitation or disagreement. Example: I'm not entirely on board with that. It seems too risky. I have a different perspective. A neutral way to introduce your own viewpoint. Example: I have a different perspective. We should consider the customer's needs. I understand your view, but... shows understanding before offering a counterargument. Example: I understand your view, but I think we need more data. That's a good point, but... acknowledges their point as valid before disagreeing. Example: that's a good point, but I believe we should prioritize efficiency. I'm not sure I share your view. A polite way to express a differing opinion. Example: I'm not sure I share your view. The plan seems impractical. Warning: suspicious content. I see it differently. A concise way to indicate a different perspective. Example: I see it differently. We should focus on long-term goals. I respect your opinion, but... shows respect while introducing your own stance. Example: I respect your opinion, but I think we should try a new approach. I hear you, but... a casual and friendly way to acknowledge before disagreeing. Example: I hear you, but I think we need to reconsider the timeline. That's a fair point, but... recognizes the fairness of their argument before countering. Example: that's a fair point, but I believe we should focus on quality. I'm not convinced that. A polite way to express doubt about their statement. Example: I'm not convinced that this will meet our goals. I see your side, but... acknowledges their perspective before offering your own. Example: I see your side, but I think we should explore other options. I have some reservations about that. A diplomatic way to express doubt or disagreement. Example: I have some reservations about that. It might not be feasible. That's one perspective, but... suggests there are multiple valid viewpoints before sharing yours. Example: that's one perspective, but I think we should consider the risks. I understand your position, but... validates their stance before presenting a counterpoint. Example: I understand your position, but I think we need a new strategy. I'm not sure that works for me. Polite, personal way to express disagreement. Example: I'm not sure that works for me. I think we need more details. I take a different view. A neutral and professional way to disagree. Example: I take a different view. The data suggests another approach. I appreciate your input, but... shows gratitude before offering a differing opinion. Example, I appreciate your input, but I think we should prioritize cost. I'm not entirely sure about that. A soft way to express skepticism or disagreement. Example, I'm not entirely sure about that. It might not be practical. That's a compelling argument but complements their reasoning before countering. Example, that's a compelling argument but I think we need more evidence. I see your reasoning but acknowledges their logic before presenting your own. Example, I see your reasoning but I believe we should focus on innovation. I'm not sure I follow your logic. Polite way to question their reasoning. Example, I'm not sure I follow your logic. Can we review the data? I have a different opinion. A straightforward way to introduce your perspective. Example, I have a different opinion. We should focus on user experience. That's an interesting take, but complements their viewpoint while offering an alternative. Example, that's an interesting take, but I think we should consider the budget. I understand your stance, but validates their position before disagreeing. Example, I understand your stance, but I think we need a new strategy. I'm not sure that's accurate. A polite way to question the accuracy of their statement. Example, I'm not sure that's accurate. The report shows different figures. I see your argument but acknowledges their argument before presenting your own. Example, I see your argument but I believe we should prioritize safety. I have a slightly different opinion. A gentle way to introduce a differing view. Example, I have a slightly different opinion. We should focus on scalability. That's worth considering but shows openness to their idea while offering a counterpoint. Example, that's worth considering but I think we should stick to the original plan.